And we should be live. As people join in, make sure you say hello in the chat. And I will also share a link if people want to join this stream. I know a lot of people like to talk in the chat, which is great. But also, if you want to join the live stream, I'll share a link a little bit later as well if you want to join. Or feel free to message me if you want to join on LinkedIn, which I'm going to make sure I pull up as well, actually, while we're getting going here. We're like a minute early. Just wanted to get the event rolling. So when people join in, it's already live. Hello, hello. Let me make sure I'm in the LinkedIn live as well. So I can also say hello in the chat. Oops. I had audio messed up here. Let me switch my audio. Testing. Also, I apologize if you hear construction noises in my building. They're doing some construction, and I hopefully it's not too bad. I don't think, but if it is really bad and you can't hear me over it or it's really annoying, let me know and I can try to switch rooms. I might not have as good of an audio setup, but if you do hear it too much, definitely let me know. And we're at 1 o'clock now. I'm going to post in the chat real quick. I'll say hello. And yeah, if anyone in the chat does want to let me know, do you hear too much construction noise? It doesn't sound too bad to me anymore, but just want to double check. Also, some people ask for the slides, so I'm going to post the slide link in the chat as well. Even though, we're just recapping some of the chapters of the book. Hello, Lance. Welcome. Also, if you want to join the live stream, you can message me. And also, I'll probably share out a link in a little bit. I'm going to get going here, let people join in, and then I'll share more links as we go. But welcome, everyone. And for the people who already said hello in the chat, do you hear a lot of construction noise? Let me know. If so, I can try to adjust rooms potentially. Doesn't seem like it's too bad right now. Cool. Someone said no problem. I do have the audio or echo cancellation or background noise removal going, but you never know how well it works with certain noises. So awesome. Thank you. Cool. So I will go ahead and start this. And then, like I said, I'll share a link to if anyone wants to join in the live stream. I'll just let a few more people join in here and I'll kind of set the stage a little bit. So I totally forgot to update the name here, but we did not read AI agents in actions. That's what we read last month. This month, we read APIs for AI and data science, or at least that's what we're going to be discussing today. It's totally okay if you didn't read the book. Maybe it's still interesting for you to kind of listen to some of the topics. I'll recap kind of what the chapters talk about. Obviously, if you want to read the book and go super in depth, you should go purchase it. Or if you have an O'Reilly subscription or a library card, a lot of libraries have free O'Reilly access as well. And I'll share the link to the book too, real quick as well, for anyone who wants to take a look at it. You post this in the chat. And, oh yeah, I forgot there's actually a new feature we can even try, where this supposedly will kind of show the live chat feed. Let's see if it actually works. I know it's new and in beta on StreamYard, so if it's not working, I'll turn it off. All right, so we are reading APIs for AI and data science. This is the AI book club. This is the book that we're reading this month. If you're new to AI book club, in short, we read a new book every month and then discuss it online. Usually most of the discussion right now happens during these kind of live events. People talk a lot in the chat. There's also an opportunity you can come join the actual live stream. You can join with just audio. If you don't want to turn on your video, that's totally fine. You can message me on LinkedIn right now. I'll send you a live link. I'll also just post it out generally. I think this time do some experimentation to see if anyone wants to join in the audio or video discussion here. And also, I'm now updating the GitHub link a little bit more, or I've updated it. So there's a GitHub repo here. This contains kind of all the books that we're reading or that we have read and links to the events. So I'm going to make sure to keep that more updated, and I have it a little bit more streamlined, so it should be easier for me to update. Also, some people have asked, could there be more of a centralized place for the event links? Right now, I cross-post them on like Meetup or just my LinkedIn, like you've probably found them from one of those places before. I did create a Luma. If anyone is interested in joining there, again, it's totally optional right now. It's still going to be posted to all the other places, but I'm trying to centralize things a little bit more, make it a little bit more easy to discover all the events happening. So gonna try that out. If anyone has any other ideas of where to post these or how to manage that, let me know as well. And just to kind of recap the books we've read so far for 2025. In 2024, we also read a book every single month, and you can find all those in the GitHub that I shared before. This year so far, we've read Building LMs for Production. That's still one of my favorites, I think, that we've read this year. And I really liked, it was in December of 2024, which was Building LMs from Scratch. I thought that was really great. And then we have RAG-driven generative AI. Then in March, we read AI engineering. Then in April, last month, we read AI agents in action. And then this month, we're reading APIs for AI and data science. And then June, we're reading the 100-page language model book. I'm really excited for that one. It looks pretty practical, uses PyTorch. It's going to go through, implementations of LMs and talk a lot about like attention and show what this looks like in PyTorch. And I've read his other 100-page book, was really, really good. Earlier in my machine learning career, it was a 100-page ML book. I have it around somewhere, or actually, I think I gave it to someone. Great book, and so I'm excited to see that format applied to LMs. And then in July, we're going to read Reinforcement Learning for Finance. Part of the reason is, we haven't read the book yet, but I'm hoping that it's going to be a good kind of practical introduction to reinforcement learning that doesn't feel like a really heavy textbooks. A lot of the other ones out there are kind of more dense textbooks. I'm hoping this will be kind of a practical reinforcement learning kind of applied book. So I'm excited to see how that goes. And then in August, we have scheduled Building Agentic AI Systems. There's going to be a lot more agent books coming out, but they're all coming out kind of later in the year because everyone's writing them right now. What should we read next? So I always propose this question to everyone. So let me know in the chat, or again, when you join live here too, if you want, you can discuss what books we want to read next. So we already have book through August. There's a whole bunch of cool ones. Like I said, they're coming out soon. I'm hesitant to already schedule one if it hasn't been released because I've seen the release date get pushed back quite a few times. But Manning actually came out with a whole bunch like last month that seemed really cool. We have machine learning system design. LMs in production has been out for a little bit. It looks good. Graph neural networks in action, causal AI, and effective conversational AI, which talks about building effective chatbots. I think not just the LM piece, but kind of how do you build that interaction or UI. I think that would be pretty interesting. Out of these books, what sounds the most interesting to read next for everyone? Let me know in the chat. And then with that, I'll go in more into our book here. So again, the say hello in the live chat. And then I'm going to try something new this time. Usually I have people message me. Also, if you've been here before, you probably know Sige. He's usually kind of co-hosting these with me. He could not make it today, unfortunately. So it's just me, unless other people want to come join the video chat. So I'm going to actually get a link here. And I'm going to try this out this time. So I'm going to post this in the chat on LinkedIn. And again, no pressure. You can keep the conversation in the chat. I know a lot of people like to do that. But if you do want to kind of join in, and again, you don't have to turn on your video if you don't want. You can just join with the audio discussion. I'll share the link here in a second. Someone said LMs in production. We just read that one in January. It was really good. Definitely worth a read. Actually, I was going to reread a chapter of it recently, but we probably won't do it again, at least this year for book club. So any of these, wait, sorry, you said LMs in production. This one, not building LMs for production, LMs in production. Okay, awesome. Yeah, I'll probably add that in then. And it looks like really good. Skimming the chapters. I haven't read it all obviously yet, but maybe I'll slot that one for September. And then I think a lot of these other ones are coming out supposedly after that. So I'm really excited to add in like more of this agent books and stuff. And I know LMs in production has an agent chapter as well. All right, so this is the chapter kind of recap slide, and I have a slide for each one with a little bit more. But while I read this off, I'm also going to share that link, like I mentioned, if people want to kind of join in, no pressure. Some people have asked to make it easier to join. A lot of people, though, also just like staying on the text chat, which is totally great. Either way works for me. So this is a chapter recap. I'll read through it, and then we can go a little bit deeper into some of these as well. And again, this is kind of a high-level recap for a lot of these. If this sounds interesting and you haven't read the book, definitely recommend buying the book, or again, reading it in one of those places like I said, a lot of the libraries or maybe your university you're at, they often have some form of the free O'Reilly account that you can actually get a lot of these books in. I don't know if they include all the books from the other publishers like Manning and Pact, but they definitely have the O'Reilly books, and this is an O'Reilly book, so I think it should probably be in the free library version as well. Chapter 1 was creating APIs that data scientists will love. And again, we'll dive deeper into these. I'll read them off, and if anything stands out to me, I'll mention them. And if they stand out to you, mention them in the chat as well. Selecting your API architecture, creating your database. Chapter 4 was developing the FastAPI code. Has anyone used FastAPI before? Or actually, has anyone developed APIs before at all? That could be an interesting question. Or was this all kind of new to you if you did reading the book? And then chapter 5 was documenting your API. Chapter 6 is deploying your API to the cloud. And I thought it was interesting, actually, in one of these chapters, I think it ties into chapter 5, but I think they might go deeper into it in one of the other chapters. I think that he wrote this before, like Model Context Protocol, MCP, became really big for communication to models of how to use APIs or tools. And they actually talked a lot about it in this book, which I thought was really cool. Documenting your API very well, but also in a way that like LMs could understand how to use it and call it. So it was definitely a huge kind of, foresight into what was coming, which I thought was really neat, that just seeing that observation really laid out very clearly. I think even before MCP came out, definitely before it got really big, though. Someone said, yes, they had built APIs, Tarek. FastAPI tutorials only. Nice. Yeah, I've used FastAPI for some toy stuff or like fiddling around. I had used a lot of Flask previously in my career. I used to be a software engineer, not on the AI side. So I actually did a lot of Flask and a little bit of React and front end. Someone said they use Node.js instead of FastAPI. Yeah, I've used a little bit of Node in the past too, a long, long time ago. Actually, going through these chapters reminded me of my kind of past career. The first half of these chapters talks about, building REST APIs is kind of what you end up building in the project parts of this chapter. They talk about databases a little bit and like SQL Alchemy, the ORM to communicate from Python to the database. And it definitely brought me back into kind of what I used to previously work in. And I haven't done as much of that work recently. So it was kind of a really fun refresher on all those topics for me. And then chapter 6, when it's deploying your API to the cloud, they show kind of two versions of using AWS, I think it was Lightsail, and then you can also kind of deploy in code spaces. So they walk you through how to run all this code directly in GitHub code spaces, which was pretty cool. And you can kind of deploy from there while the space is active to test as well. And then they also deploy on, what else? There was one other place they deployed, and I think it was a place I hadn't heard of. I usually write down the tools. I don't think I did for this one, but it was another kind of place where you could deploy an API pretty easily. If someone else knows, you can shout it out in the chat or join. Oh, I see actually Bruce joined. Welcome, Bruce. If you want to unmute, you can. If your mic is working.
Yeah, thank you, Sage. Great to be here.
Yeah, thank you for coming up. Did you read the book at all, or just interested in discussing any of the things that are mentioned?
I just learned about the book club last week, so I just got the book over the weekend and haven't had a chance to read it yet.
Awesome. Well, welcome to the book club. What are you currently kind of working on, or like, was there anything that stood out in here that you're really excited to learn and or maybe even take to your career or current job or something like that?
Well, actually, I've been a stay-at-home dad for the past 12 years, but then I spent the past year doing a boot camp in AI and machine learning, so I'm hoping to get into that field in the near future. So just trying to learn as much as I can and do some networking.
Awesome. Awesome. Very cool. And yeah, I love networking for, getting into a field or just job searching and stuff is always one of my top things. So that's awesome. Um, I'll go through some more of the chapters. And then we had 7, which was batteries included, creating a Python SDK. So once you create your API, they actually go through what it looks like to create an SDK, where you actually deploy it, or you can deploy it as a Python package, like on PyPy, be able to pip install this and then interact with your SDK, which again was really cool, kind of insightful introduction to building an SDK in general. And then chapter 8 was what data scientists should know about APIs. So if you haven't worked a lot with APIs too, and maybe you've only done an SDK or worked through an SDK, but you haven't like called get, post, or put, or delete, or anything, they walk through how that kind of all works in HTTP, which again, I thought was a really good overall introduction. And like in job interviews and stuff, I've been asked those questions, but they're not always inherently taught in data science or machine learning courses. So I thought this book overall covers a lot of really good foundational stuff that sometimes is maybe missing from a completely ML focused tutorial, but you might, again, it really depends on the job you get, but you might have to kind of learn about or apply in your career somewhere. So I thought this really covers a lot of those gaps, which was really cool. Chapter 9 was using APIs for data analytics. So that shows how to kind of pull down data from the API that you had built in the earlier chapters and then analyze it in like a notebook. If you've done tutorials before somewhere, you might have done something like that, like in a Jupyter notebook, pull in data, visualize it. Again, kind of a good intro to it. And then chapter 10 was using APIs and data pipelines. So pulling in data again, but they actually use Airflow to build a DAG and like a reproducible pipeline that you can rerun, which again is a good intro to that. These are really good intros to those topics. And then if you thought it was interesting or wanted to know more, you'd probably dive even deeper into other resources. But again, I thought they're really good kind of intros to those things. And then 11 was using APIs in Streamlit data apps. So I'm not sure if anyone's used Streamlit here before. Again, you can let us know in the chat. It's really cool Python library to build web apps, like their visualizations, and or not even just visualizations, but a whole application directly in Python. So you don't have to mess with like JavaScript or HTML or CSS to get kind of a pretty looking page. Streamlit is really cool and is a little bit more customizable than Gradio, but I also really like Gradio. If you haven't looked at Gradio, it's another really good interface thing that makes it really easy to build an interface in Python for like prototyping. And Gradio has some other pre-built components that I found easier to work with Streamlit, but Streamlit has more customization, I think. So it allows you to make your app look a little bit different. And then chapter 12 was using APIs with artificial intelligence. And I think this is the chapter where it tied in, like I was saying, almost like before MCP came out or got big, how you could call these APIs agentically, which I thought was pretty interesting from an LM model. And then chapter 13 was deploying a machine learning API. That one use a more simple scikit-learn model, deploy it as an API with FastAPI, and then you're able to make like prediction calls to that endpoint and get predictions returned. Again, really cool introduction to the topic there, especially because like a lot of the sources, like I mentioned, at least when I was going through and learning, like they talk about how to train a model, but not necessarily deploy it. So again, thought it was cool. Oh, hello. Someone said they can't hear me. Can anyone else hear me? Or is it just Edward? Someone else said they can hear okay. Okay, so sorry, Edward, it might be your connection, potentially. And also catch you up on the chat. Someone said new to APIs, interested in learning and building from scratch, any useful resources. I think someone else had replied, depends on the languages you know. FastAPI or Flask is best if you know Python best. Each language tends to have its best frameworks is probably what that meant. Yeah, so I mean, this book I actually think is a really good start if you're new to APIs. Obviously, there's other resources too, but this I thought was a really good introduction and something I wish I had when I was getting started. You could also go look at like the FastAPI GitHub repo, actually. If you haven't run anything before. I think they have probably decent getting started tutorials. And then I think I left off on chapter 14. I wasn't expecting this in this one. This has a chapter using APIs with LangChain, and they actually go beyond just LangChain and use LangGraph. LangChain's more recent like agent framework that I think a little bit more people are trying out to use. So this book actually had you build an agent to interact with your API. So I thought that was really interesting, and I wasn't expecting that to happen in this book. And then chapter 15 talks about using ChatGPT to call your API. So if you go to ChatGPT, you can create a custom GPT, add in other resources, and one of those is like API fields. And so it actually talked about how to add that in. So again, thought this was a really, really overall like a really good introduction to APIs in general, and not even just creating your API, but then how would you create like, or how could you create a Python SDK around it? Then how do you use or consume that API? So if you're a little less interested in building, it even has the consumption part in interacting with Streamlit and AI, like we had talked about. But I thought this was a pretty well-rounded introduction. So I don't know if anyone else who did read the book, if they kind of felt that way, or what was their overall kind of opinion. I thought it was really good. And like for the person asking new to APIs, if you're interested in Python, like this is definitely a Python oriented one. It's also very oriented around data science and AI. If you're interested in that, this would be a book I would totally recommend for you to check out. And I lost track of the name of the person who asked that originally, but it might be the person Turin who just said thank you. And then I can go through a little bit deeper in the chapters. Also, I don't know if Bruce, if you said you just got the book and you're looking, I don't know, did any of those sound interesting to you? Is there anyone that particularly stands out that you're most interested to dive into when you read the book?
Nothing in particular yet. When I was finishing up my boot camp, I did use FastAPI to create an API, so I'm interested to see what other tools are out there with similar utility.
Cool. Oh yeah, I'd love to hear if you don't mind sharing a little bit more about your boot camp experience too. And I know like people are always looking for other resources and stuff. Is it one that you would want to share the name of or recommend going through?
Sure, it was through Springboard, but it was also sponsored by the University of California, San Diego. It was kind of a high-level developer side of AI course. It was my first exposure to Python, so I've been learning Python, which is great. Um, and they go over the various types of machine learning algorithms for classification, regression, as well as large language models. It was actually very insightful for someone with no experience in AI, but with a background in IT. It was actually very helpful.
Awesome. How long was it?
Well, I had hoped to get it done in about 6 months. They say it takes about 9. It actually took me 12 due to various personal things that went on during the year.
Yeah. Awesome. That sounds cool. Like yeah, going through boot camp can be really, really helpful in having like the extra structure and people to help you get unstuck. And hopefully there's like I haven't gone through Springboard, so I don't know what it's like, but hopefully there's a cool like community that you get to go through it with as well. I feel like all those stuff can really help sometimes.
Yeah, they used Slack, although there wasn't a lot of engagement. I think that kind of got better right near the end when I was finishing up. But they didn't do a great job of engaging it as a larger community.
Got it. Yeah. It varies, and like you're saying, maybe how many people are going through and who those people are. I used to work at a data science boot camp that was called Galvanize, and it was always really fun to see. Like it was in person before COVID. It was fun to see like people are still friends to this day, and I'm still friends with people that went through it like to this day too. It was really cool. But it was when I worked there, and sometimes people would ask like, "What do you teach in this boot camp that you can't learn online?" And I would say, "Well, nothing." But are you going to go do all those things? Like it's like going through a university. You can usually find a lot of the resources, but I think being around people and having kind of mentors get you unstuck is and like the accountability is a big thing. Awesome. So I can go through a little bit deeper on some of the chapters if people are interested. Also, if there's any other questions or comments people want to say in the chat, feel free to put them there too. Someone asked too, what's the best for Golang? I am not sure what the best framework is for Golang. If anyone else knows, throw it in the chat. All right, so I go a little deeper in some of the chapters. If there's nothing else going on right now, so chapter 1, the creating APIs data scientists will love. These are kind of the sub points in those chapters. How do data scientists use APIs? What tools do data scientists use? I think one of the points here is, often it's Python with an SDK, and you want to develop a really good SDK for those users. Designing APIs for data scientists, so thinking about how they're going to call the data, how you want to structure that is a really good part for planning out your project. And then this book is kind of structured around building this portfolio project, which is like at a pretend sports analytics company. So you build an API to have access to their data. And then selecting the first API products. I forget what that exactly was. That might have been selecting, I think selecting like what to show on your API. Chapter 2 was selecting your API architecture. So it also talked a little bit about like REST is what we end up using, but it talked a little bit about GraphQL architecture and gRCP in the API architecture styles. And I accidentally copied this in, show more items. Technology architecture. So what technology do you want to use to kind of deploy or host that API? Talk about the software used in the chapter, and then they do again a tutorial on how to kind of run all this just in a GitHub code space, so you don't have to install anything locally if you don't want to. And then we had creating your database, components of your API, how you want to store that information on the database, and then they use SQLite for this. And then there is a section on using SQL Alchemy, which is the ORM that you can use to interact with your database directly from Python. Then we had chapter 4 was developing the FastAPI code. Again, this is kind of the good introduction to FastAPI and Pydantic for validating inputs and outputs, which also later on in one of the chapters they mentioned, and I haven't used it yet, but Pydantic has Pydantic AI, which is kind of an agentic framework that I want to poke around with as well. I don't know if anyone has used it yet. Actually, that's a fun question too for anyone in the chat. Have you tried any agent frameworks? And if so, did you like them or not? Or what are your thoughts on them? So chapter 4 goes into basically just setting up the API in FastAPI. They also actually touch a lot on testing, which I didn't mention before. It doesn't have its own separate chapter, but there's, again, a lot of kind of testing using PyTest in here. So again, this is a really good book talking about software engineering practices around AI, which or around developing APIs that could be used in AI or hosting AI models. So again, I thought it was a really good book to kind of fill in maybe some gaps if you had only gone through mostly some of the ML kind of resources that I've seen before. Chapter 5 talked a lot about documenting your API, sends a signal of trust that people can use it, makes it really easy to use, hopefully. Then they review different examples of which ones are really good. And also, this is the one I'd mentioned, can tie into how an LLM could understand how to use your API. Again, this is before MCP, Model Context Protocol, came out, where there's maybe some, that's probably becoming the standard. I know there's other ones too, but they mentioned having the Open API specification file, which tells how to use your API, and an LLM could, probably use that as well if they wanted. Let's see, a couple of questions in the chat. Someone said, what do you think are the most applicable or practical work-centered uses? I'm not sure what that question specifically was for. Was that for chapters in the book, or was that for specific frameworks? Someone else asked, what project you build using this? Can you showcase us? So this is the book that you do walk through. Actually, I think I have the GitHub for this too. Or I know I shared it in Slack. So, I guess I can share this link too. There's a Slack channel where I usually share links and try to discuss somewhat as we're reading the book. So if you want to do that more asynchronously, you can. I'll share that here. And I know I had posted the GitHub link to the book. So this book has a GitHub link in it. Let me go find it real quick. GitHub. So, I mean, there isn't a specific project I built with this yet, but I thought there's a lot of good foundational pieces. If you wanted to host, let's say, host a model. And actually, like, I'm going to be building some more examples soon around hosting and building APIs with models, kind of as a backend and hosted applications. So it kind of fits perfect into what I've been working on already, and a good refresher on some of that. So I think, like, if you want to have a model, you train a model, you want to put it on an endpoint and have some way people can interact with it. Chapter, like, kind of the later chapters, there's a section here that I didn't have, but it's like section 4 or 3, which starts at chapter 12. The last 3 or 4 chapters here are really relevant. Let's say if you have a trained model and then you want to host it as an endpoint and you've never done that before, it shows how to do that with FastAPI, and then how you can also consume maybe an API that you make in an agent application, or again with ChatGPT or something like that. So most relevant, depends on what you're doing. Most relevant for me were probably those last 4 ones. Also, like I mentioned, I had actually worked in building like REST APIs quite some time in the past, so definitely a great refresher for me. Like, I hadn't used like SQL Alchemy in a little while, so it's interesting to see again. Oh yeah, so someone said, which chapters do you think are the most applicable and best to focus on for practical and work-centered uses? So again, depends on what work you're looking for. If you're in the AI space, again, you might want to go through all these chapters, but these last 4 I thought were pretty interesting. Also 11, where it shows how to use Streamlit. If you've never built like a Streamlit app, I think that's pretty fun as well. But I think they all can be practical, just depending on what you've already done before, and again, what you're looking to do for work. Like, if your work is building APIs that data scientists are going to consume, the first half of this book is going to be really, really relevant to you. And like, building good documentation, really important for getting adoption for your API and SDK. So again, I think these are all really good chapters. It just depends on what you're looking to do, and what your current experience is. Like, the building a Python SDK, I thought was really cool too. Like, if you've never built a Python package that you want to publish and think about how people would interact with it, I thought that was a really good chapter as well. Someone asked me a question. I had used both Node.js and FastAPI. Which one do I prefer? I had used more of Flask than FastAPI back in the day, but I'm very biased because I work mostly in Python now. So I would say FastAPI, but depends on the language you want to work in and what your web application is doing. Like, if you're already programming in a lot of JavaScript, on the other side, like React or something like that, Node totally might be fine too. I had built some apps with Flask as the backend and then React as the front end. So React was consuming the Flask API I had made. But I think it just depends on what you like. They're both really good at what they do. Obviously, they're both widely used, but I am biased towards Python for sure, in my just personal opinion. But you should try them both out. Like, if you like JavaScript and you're building the rest of your application in JavaScript, you might want to look at Node. Chapter 6, resuming just back on the chapter recaps. Again, keep asking questions in the chat. I had also shared the link here if you want to come join in, and if you have anything you want to say on audio or video, feel free to join as well. Chapter 6 is deploying your API to the cloud. This talked about, like I mentioned, Render was the other company I couldn't remember. So they talk about deploying this on AWS Lightsail, which is a service to host applications, deploying to Render, which is another cloud host provider. They also have a good introduction, or like a small introduction, to Docker as well. So if you haven't used Docker, it's a way of defining an environment. Like you have a Docker file, define the exact requirements you want in your environment, and then it can create that image of like the OS it's going to run in. So it's a really reproducible way of deploying things. And so also, if you've never used Docker, I thought that was probably a good introduction for you as well. Let's see, what did I have any other notes? Yeah, Docker, I mentioned. I had some other notes down here. So Docker and just deployment in general, if you've never thought about deployment, pretty interesting. Has anyone used Docker before in the chat? I use it quite a bit now, but actually with the company I work at, we have an SDK for developing like AI pipelines, and we have a abstraction in Python in the SDK that you can define your Docker files just in Python now. So I actually haven't written a Docker file in a while, but I've created a lot of Docker images recently, which is nice because I like writing in Python or pointing out my requirements.txt, giving it some environment variables, and then it just builds it for me without creating a Docker file. And then chapter 7, this was the creating Python SDK. So the SDK bridges the gap of interacting with your API. Like you're gonna have a lot of default parameters and conventions or ways how to like pull specific data very easily. So they talk about that. Again, this is building for the kind of the toy app in the book is like a sports data analyst company. And it's like, how do you pull that data down? And how do you think about this again for data scientists? I see a lot of people said yes to using Docker images. Does anyone love writing Docker files? But it's awesome. It's awesome that you have experience using Docker again, because it's kind of the go-to thing for building reproducible environments right now. So if you haven't done it yet, again, this book kind of has, again, it's a brief intro, but it's cool to have that little intro before you can dive deeper in. Chapter 8 is what data scientists should know about APIs. Like I'd mentioned earlier, it talks about using APIs at different styles, and then the HTTP basics, which is like using get, post, put. So get is like pulling data. Post is like creating creating a new entry or something in your web app or database that it's tied to. Put is updating that, and then delete is deleting it. So it's good to know about those basics. And like I mentioned, I've even had this come up in interviews. Like if you're working at a company and you're building an AI product, you're not just training the model, you want to deploy it and have people interact with it. So again, I thought this kind of covers those gaps in a good way. How to consume APIs responsibly. There's a lot that could go into this, like validation and security, which I think they touch on. But a lot of this is also having so you're not DDoSing a website. Like if you're pinging it, in milliseconds or something like that, they have kind of a way that's a more responsible way to, like, you ping it, and if you didn't get what you wanted or it was down, you don't just ping it right away. You might wait a little bit longer, ping it again, and if you're still not getting it, there's like a whole kind of exponential back off kind of thing that you wait more and more times. And like if you're going to retry 10 times, you don't just do it 10 times succinctly. You have to like kind of wait, and so you're not like DDoSing a website. And then talks about how to build APIs, how to test APIs, again, more in PyTest. And then the containerization part, again, a little bit with Docker there. And then again, this is all, you can do it all in code spaces. And then chapter 9 was using APIs for data analytics. Catch up on chat. Yes, use Docker for building simple trading algorithms for testing and learning. Very cool. Building trading algorithms sounds pretty fun. And also, I saw a lot of books come out on that recently as well, which seems pretty interesting. I don't know, actually, for the trading algorithms, what do you use? Were you doing like machine learning? Is it LLMs? Was it time series forecasting? What kind of model were you using, if you were using a model? Someone said best to use AI to build Docker files. That is a good use case for AI. Also, regex, in my opinion, as well. I don't know. Regex, I always had to Google it before and go to one of those regex building sites. So obviously, I want to still be able to read it and test it, but that is a great thing that I like using generative AI for right now as well. Someone said, "Friends don't let friends write Docker files." That's funny. That's a good one. I'm gonna use that now when next time I'm showing off image spec, which is the like we're saying the Pythonic way that we have in our SDK for building Docker files. I'm gonna steal that quote. Thanks, Mikkel. Chapter 9 was using APIs for data analytics. So this is, again, now that we have an API built, it kind of shows how to pull it into a notebook here. Or I think this is it. Did I get ahead of myself? Let's see. No, I think that was chapter 9. Yeah, shows how to consume it in. I think it's building a custom metrics, pulling down different metrics from the API here, like in your notebook. So if you've ever gone like through and done data analysis or exploratory data analysis in a notebook, that's kind of what this chapter was showing, pulling down those fantasy metrics. And then I think you built kind of a chart with it and got some data, or calculated different scores for different sport teams with it. And then the next chapter I'd mentioned uses Airflow, kind of shows how to build a DAG. So if you want to pull data down and then do pre-processing and think of more of this like a data engineering type workflow, does an introduction of that with Airflow. And then 11 was using the APIs in Streamlit data apps. So this actually had you build like an application with a map and some really cool visualizations. And then 12, this is the kind of AI section where you got to think about how your AI could call your API. And this is, there's a part designing APIs to use with generative AI and LMs. Again, this talks about using that open API specification file versus like MCP, I think, and it was written before MCP came out. A little intro on AI if you hadn't heard of it before. Same with LMs. I'm guessing most people have heard of that here. But yeah, kind of just briefly summarizes it if you hadn't. And then chapter 13, again, this is deploying a model. So this actually used scikit-learn, if I remember correctly, to deploy your machine learning endpoint, again, using FastAPI. They also even used Onyx, which is a really cool runtime and file type that a lot of people use for production ML. So again, actually took a little step further than I was thinking they would, which again is really cool. So introducing you to something like Onyx, which is a really popular machine learning runtime and file type for production AI. You actually get to do that in this chapter as well. And then they also talked about the crisp DM process, which often comes up actually in book clubs too. Like, what are important things when building AI is understanding all these things. I don't think I had heard the crisp DM acronym before, but basically you want to have your business understanding and how is this model or whatever you're building when it's deployed, how can you actually measure the effect of it? And are you asking all those right questions up front? Then you have the data understanding, data preparation, modeling, evaluating that model, and then deployment, kind of all steps that you should be taking here. And then we had chapter 14, using APIs with a LangChain. Like I mentioned, you actually use LangGraph, which I thought was cool, and you actually build an agent here to interact with your API. Again, I thought this is really cool and went beyond what I expected to be in this kind of section of the book. So you actually go through and build like a whole thing from scratch, from your API to SDA to actually having an LM or agent call it. That was pretty cool. Like I mentioned, I asked before, I think some people said like LangGraph. If you've used an agent framework, put in the chat. I think it's interesting to kind of hear what people are using, what they found useful. I think I've mostly played around with like small agents, which is Hugging Faces, and then Llama Index. And then I poked around with LangGraph a little bit and Crew AI. I haven't tried Pydantic AI yet, but they all are pretty fun. Also, sometimes I'm curious, like I was building my own kind of agent from scratch without a framework the other day, just to kind of learn what it is like to manage that whole loop. And I kind of liked having full control. So I'll be curious to see how kind of these frameworks play out in the next several years when people are putting agents in production. Are they using them, or do they convert to kind of building their own loop and use them for proof of concepts? I'm not quite sure. I haven't formed a full opinion on it yet. I'd love to hear what other people think. And then the last chapter was the using ChatGPT to call your API. So again, like I mentioned, you can create a custom GPT, which I totally forgot about until the last book we read also talked about this. I forgot that you can go to ChatGPT, create a GPT, at least if you're on the pro plan. I forget if it's in the free one. And you can basically give it a whole bunch of external resources. Those can be documents that you upload. It could be endpoints that you point it to. And then it just has an easier way to pull that information in, kind of that retrieval process of RAG, and then generate information about it. So you can build one specific to your product or specific resources that you're studying or something like that. I kind of forgot that existed, and it should be something that I play around a little bit with, I think. And those are all the chapters here. And I see some other questions in the chat or comments. So I'm going to read some of those out as well. Let me scroll up. Someone said, "Oh, pulling from a trading API to machine learning." This is the person who was building the kind of like stock market or financial prediction apps. When I talked about Docker before, they're pulling from a trading API to machine learning to predict to connecting it with WhatsApp for signal generation. Oh, interesting. All containerized, so all using Docker. Cool. Sounds like a really cool project. And someone asked, a bit late, wondering how to get a copy of the presentation. So again, this is just kind of recapping some of the book. You should definitely go check out the book itself. If you're watching this recording on LinkedIn, it stays right here, so you can always come back and watch the recording. There's also a YouTube link that I can pull up in a minute and share as well, if that's easier for people to go to. Let me pull that up real quick. So the recording will live right where you're watching it, and then also here. And I think on LinkedIn, I don't know if the links come through as clickable or if you have to copy them. I always forget. Oh, and someone said that there should be a Google slide link above. I'll share that one more time too. So again, there's nothing really crazy in these slides. It's just kind of listing out really what the chapters are. So you could also look at the book info for that. But it does have links to the book, to some resources for staying informed on other AI book clubs. And then another question that said, Sage, I've always deployed on EC2 instance on AWS, but I never had heavy DNNs on your API. Where do you go to kind of deployment as a service for neural networks? Is this covered in the book? They don't really cover that too much in the book. This kind of goes through more just lightweight deployment, and they use scikit-learn in there. I don't remember if they talk about other ones. So I know, for example, AWS has GPUs, and there's a whole bunch of other newer clouds that have GPUs as well. I will say also very biased because I work at a company. We have a little bit of a deployment thing. So this is what I've been using a lot of. And you could check it out if you want. I had some docs open for it already. Yeah, not a planned pitch for it or anything, but we have a thing called serverless. You can sign up for free and get $30 of cloud credit in. And there's T4s and A100s in it if you want to play around with it. I'll share this out. You can just go check it out if you want. But it's actually like for building production pipelines for training machine learning models is what most people know us for. And then we have a deployment feature where, again, if you're using like the enterprise version, you're deployed on your own cloud, but we have a big abstraction in Python where it's really easy to define how to scale, basically. Like it's built on top of Kubernetes. So that's what I've been using a lot of lately. And I like it, but again, very biased there. I know there's a whole bunch of other services, not just the big clouds, but a whole bunch of newer clouds kind of popping up as well that you could look at. Towards AI is one. Has anyone heard of them? They have serving with GPUs as well. I would check them out. I did a blog post with them, or we did a blog post with them not too long ago as well. Let me pull up their link as well. I don't want to just share my company. Oh wait, not Towards AI. Sorry, Together AI. I get them confused. They're really cool people over there too. I just met with one of them a couple weeks ago at ODSC East. I was at 2 conferences back to back the last 2 weeks. I was at ODC East and then Embedded Vision Summit. Both are really fun. But yeah, Together AI was there. Also, some of the frameworks. So if you are using like Crew AI or something, I think they probably have a deployment kind of platform now too. You could look at. But if you're just looking to deploy an API to interact with, yeah, you should look at probably one of the main cloud providers or Together AI or Union, like I'd shared. I don't know how much Together AI gives you in free resources, but like I was saying, we'll give you $30 of compute. Oh yeah, and someone said SageMaker, which is on AWS. And my name is Sage, but SageMaker was my dad. I'm not affiliated in any way. SageMaker has a lot of options for it too, but like all the big clouds do. GCP has Vertex AI or AI Studio. I forget if they kind of rebranded it, and then Azure as well. There's one that was really popular a year ago. I think it was called Paper something, Paper Space. I could be wrong. And I think they had kind of cheap-ish GPUs. Let me see if we can find that real quick too. Oh, no, I think it was Paperspace. I haven't used them. I had seen them a lot, so I don't know if they still have as good of a deal. You can check that out as well. And if anyone is interested in, let me get a link real quick. If anyone is interested in seeing kind of how to train and deploy a model, like since we were talking about it on Union, I have an event coming up this week, which I don't have the link ready because again, I wasn't ready to talk about it. It just came up naturally, which is cool. Let me pull that link. So we'll actually like fine tune a computer vision model, and then we'll also deploy it though. So if you do want to see the deployment piece, I'll be talking about it there. And even if you end up not using like Union, hopefully it'll be interesting to see what the deployment part looks like and valuable to go. Like if you went over to SageMaker or something like that, there's some of the concepts in there. Like we add kind of the spin down time, and then also things like max replicas or min replicas that you want to kind of deploy. So if you have a lot of people visiting your site, or sorry, if you want to pay like as cheap as possible, you can have it spin down to 0. That just means, so like when no one's using your site, it goes all the way down. When someone visits, it's got to spin back up, which takes time, but then you're not paying for that compute when no one's there. Otherwise, you get a min replica of something like 1. So there's 1 replica up, people go visit your site. And then as more and more people visit your site, you can decide how to scale out and make more replicas to handle more traffic. So you say when 5 people visit, make another kind of spin up another container. So we talked about Docker before. If it's built on Kubernetes, you're always spinning up like a container with defined resources in there. So it's kind of cool to think about how to, I guess, scale the deploying piece as well. Yeah, someone said the problem is that EC2 instance with GPU costs a lot. Yep. Yeah, I think that's probably true with most of the big cloud ones. With the newer cloud ones, or like I'd shared, again, I haven't used them yet, but I know like Paperspace, like they had cheaper GPUs kind of for experimentation purposes. Like I think you could train and deploy on it. It might not have kind of the scaling stuff built in like SageMaker has. But yeah, their GPUs are generally pretty expensive. And also, if you are using a GPU, you can look at using lighter weight models with lighter weight GPUs. Like I mentioned, L4 or T4 versus an A100, because A100s are really expensive. But if you can use like a quantized version of your model or something like that, like if you're using an LM or one of the smaller models, now everyone's releasing not only their 80 billion parameter model, but their 8 billion parameter, or Quinn 3 released a 600 million parameter model the other week, which is really cool. I've been playing around with that. It actually works really good for just my purposes anyway, of like playing around with an LM with some reasoning capabilities. Kind of, it works great. I've heard CoreWeave is really good. I haven't used them yet to deploy on either. CoreWeave is another kind of like a new, like people use the term neo cloud, so not one of the big 3 or 4. But I've heard they're really good. I don't know what their pricing is off the top of my head, so you should definitely look. But there's other ones like that as well. Cool. Any other questions or thoughts before we wrap up here? I know we're almost already at 2. And I know, Bruce, you're up here. I don't know if you have anything else you want to add, anything you thought was interesting or cool. You're welcome to, because you're up here, which is, thank you for coming up, by the way, too. It's always great having another person come join the stream.
Nothing to add, but I appreciate your recap of the chapters and your insight as you went along and explained some things that I haven't experienced yet, don't have experience with yet, that is. And hoping to be better prepared next month for the 100-page LM book. And
yeah, no worries. I'm excited for that one, and yeah, hopefully you can if you want to come up again, that'd be great. It's always great having people up here, like I'd mentioned. Usually we have a co-host, but he couldn't make it today too. So, but if anyone else wants to join, like I'd shared the link this time, hopefully it made it a little easier for people that did want to join. I know that a lot of people like talking in the chat too, and that works great as well, as long as you are all pretty happy with that as well. With that, then we'll probably wrap up. Only 5 minutes early, so not really that early. But thank you everyone for coming here. If you have questions or want to talk about kind of the next book as we read it, you can join this channel. Flight is an open source platform that I work on, talking about the training side, and deployment, training and deployment kind of that I was talking about earlier. We have a popular open source called Flight, and in the Slack channel, which is kind of rebranded now, it's just building AI together, making it a little bit more of a community, not just about the open source. There's an AI reading group channel, and if you want to discuss the book as you're reading it, any of the previous books, any of the books further ahead, I know not everyone wants to read every single book every month, so if you want to jump ahead and start reading one of the other ones, like, you're more than welcome to. You can discuss it in the channel kind of asynchronously, and I try to share links and interesting stuff there as we go as well. So it's that first timer on the book club, but they'll definitely be back. Awesome. Yeah. Thank you for coming, Lance. It's great. Again, it's great to have everyone in the chat. Like, it's not a problem if you don't want to come up here. I just always feel like, oh, do people want to listen to only me talk? So I love that everyone's talking in the chat, though. Really good questions, really good insight there. And if anyone wants to join next time again on the stream, you're more than welcome to as well. So thank you, everyone, for coming. Hopefully you found this fun and insightful. Go read this book. If you thought the chapter sounded good, go check out the book and say hello to the author. I know he couldn't join the stream today. Sometimes we have the author join, but Ryan Day is really cool. I've talked with him a little bit on LinkedIn. You should follow him as well. Maybe say you saw his book at the book club, and maybe we can get him on a stream or something like that to answer questions that people would have. Actually, I should pull up his LinkedIn. Then I'll end the stream. I'm gonna get his LinkedIn, and I'll share it in the chat real quick. Just give him a shout out. Totally should have done that earlier. His LinkedIn profile, Ryan Day. Give him a follow. Tell him you really enjoyed the book if you read it. Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone. It was really good. Really lively discussion today in the chat. So I really enjoyed it. Thank you, everyone. I'm going to hit end on the stream now. And again, thank you, Bruce, for coming up.